booktube, it's Becky from Becky Writes. This is Becky Reads, and this is my October wrap-up video. In the month of October, I got through more books than I expected to because I had a little bit of a reading slump. I just didn't feel motivated for a couple of the weeks and just wasn't picking anything up. And then right at the end, I read a bunch. So I finished 9 books in the month of October. In total, I now have read 115 books for the year, so that's pretty much amazing. Since there are 9 books to get through, I'm gonna jump right in. The first 3 books I'm gonna talk about were the 3 audiobooks that I finished this month. The first one was The Badass Librarians of Timbuktu by Joshua Hammer. The Badass Librarians of Timbuktu is the non-fiction look at the librarians and really the manuscript historians and preservationists who are from Mali. Timbuktu is in Mali in northern Africa, and who were trying to preserve ancient manuscripts that highlight the beautiful, rich religious and philosophical history of Mali, and then to also take these preserved manuscripts and hide them from the Taliban when the Taliban swept through in the early and mid-2000s. Now, I really wanted to enjoy this because the entire concept is right up my alley. It's a book about books and preserving books, but it just didn't translate well. This was much more about the conflict and the rise of the Taliban and the geopolitical situation, and much less about the actual manuscripts and finding them, preserving them, and smuggling them. In fact, I think the entire conversation about smuggling the manuscripts was only like a chapter, maybe 2, so I just didn't love this as much as I wanted. The audiobook was really dry to me, and so I only gave it 3.5 stars. The next audiobook that I read was the absolute opposite, and that was Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. Now, Jenny Lawson is known for being the blog-ass. She has a very popular blog, and she has written a couple of other books at this point, and she is someone who has a very bizarre and sometimes kind of off-color sense of humor, but she is very relatable, and she is a very candid writer. One of the things that's really important about Jenny Lawson, and one of the things I really appreciated about her book, was that it's about her struggle with very real mental illness. Many of the stories are just funny, and since she reads the audiobook herself, you can hear her voice and the way that she says things, and they are just ridiculous. Like how she's obsessed with taxidermy, and she has a taxidermied raccoon with like arms that are opposable so she can move them around. Like, that's just ridiculous, but also hilarious. But it is a book that really does talk about the dark sides to the kinds of mental illness that she suffers from, which include debilitating depression and some phobias, and I think she like pulls out her hair to the point where she like bleeds, things like that. And they're a little bit like hard to read and almost just jarring, and yet she is so approachable and her writing style is so approachable that it allows you to kind of enter into solidarity with her and her experience, and she's not so othered because she suffers from a mental illness or several mental illnesses. So I found the book both completely off-putting and also completely welcoming, and I liked that. I will say I think this probably serves better as a written book because there's a lot of pictures, and because I think that her writing style is much better in the read form as little sort of digestible chunks. It was fun to listen to her read it, don't get me wrong, but I do think it probably has a better effect as a print novel, and I gave the audiobook 4 out of 5 stars. And the last nonfiction audiobook I got through this month was The Notorious RBG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg by Irin Kamron. This was a overview of the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it was inspired by the Notorious RBG Tumblr and kind of the ways in which Ruth Bader Ginsburg has become sort of a pop culture icon in addition to being a badass Supreme Court justice. This was a discussion of her sort of struggles to get through law school and to become a lawyer, to become a judge, to get on the Supreme Court, and basically how at every turn she was facing discrimination, both because she is a woman and she is a pioneering woman, but also because she's Jewish, and I just found it really fascinating. But again, like with Furiously Happy, this is a book that I think would do better as a print book and just doesn't translate the greatest as an audiobook. There's whole bunches of excerpts where legal folks have kind of broken down her legal arguments, and they're all in appendices that are not included in the audiobook, at least the audiobook that I had. There's also pictures that aren't included, so I think that I would have enjoyed it more if I had read it rather than listened to it, but I still still got a lot out of it, and I still learned a whole bunch about how influential Ruth Bader Ginsburg is, and I just admire her so much more. I just still recommend it to everyone. And I gave the audiobook 4 out of 5 stars. I also have read 5 novels and a novella this month. The first novel that I finished was Shadowshaper by Daniel Jose Older. I really enjoyed this, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This was a fantastic read. It's not a long book, and this is the story of Sayre Santiago. She is a Shadowshaper, which means that she can endow her art with life. It is a part of a religious cult and community in which she was born into but had no idea about, and it is kind of her coming of age and also realizing that there's sort of like a conflict going on that she is intricably bound to, but she has no idea how to do it. She doesn't know what to do. She has to kind of figure it out as she's in the middle of this conflict. I also really loved this because I read it for Hispanic Heritage Month and also kind of as an extended Diversathon read, and one of the things that really marks this is that every main character in this novel is a character of color, and I just loved that so much. They were rounded, and they weren't sidekicks, and they had this wonderful dialect and dialogue, and they were real and full, and I just am so glad to have books like this on the shelves. I thought it was great. It was so fast-paced. I'm hopeful for the continuing series. This really does feel like a foundational book, so I'm really wanting to see the world expanded, and I loved it. 4 out of 5 stars. You guys should all go pick up Shadowshaper. Then I read Until Beth. This is by Lisa Amowitz. Now, I've done a spoiler-free review. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and basically this is about a girl who has a special ability, and that kind of comes out through her music. It is fantastic, it's creepy, it's this wonderful blend of like X-Men meets X-Files meets Harry Potter, like in this crazy world. I totally suggest picking it up, and I will link my spoiler-free review down below. Then I jumped into a massive reread of the Old Kingdom series by Garth Nix because Goldenhand came out in October, and I was finally getting around to reading it. I reread Sabre earlier in the year, so I reread the next in the series, and that is Liriel. This follows the story of Liriel, who is a Claire, or the people who can see the future, except she can't, and she feels left out, and so this is her kind of figuring out who she is and what her heritage actually is, and going on an incredible adventure. I love this series, I love the world, I love the fact that there are the 9 gates of death. I just think it's so fantastic. If you have never read the Old Kingdom series, you really need to. You are missing out. And of course, I gave Liriel 5 out of 5 stars. Liriel's adventures pick up in Abhorsen. These kind of make a duology. Sabriel is a standalone, and then these take place about 20 years after Sabriel, and so this is the second half of the Liriel duology, and this is them confronting the big bad. You have Liriel and the disreputable dog. This is her companion throughout the 2 books, and it just ties all these loose ends of the world together. I loved it. This is really fast-paced, very much full of action and doing and going and fighting and awesomeness and traveling in death. I just so loved it and gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read a short story. It's called Nicholas Sayre and the Creature in the Case. It's a novella. It's like 100 pages long, and it comes between the events of Abhorsen and the events of Goldenhand, which is a novel that just came out. So I finished that one, and I gave it like 3.5, 4 stars. It wasn't fantastic. It was just not long enough to be much of anything, and basically I really just wanted the next book, so, you know. And I then picked up Goldenhand, and so far this is the last book that has come out in this series. It continues the story of Liriel. This takes place about 6 months after the events of Abhorsen, and it continues showing Liriel as she develops. I don't want to say too much because I will spoil you for the other books, but this just continues the story and introduces some new characters. You get to see more of the Old Kingdom. We get to go farther to the north and see what happens in the northern provinces that are the home of the tribes. There is a revisitation of a bad guy. There are your favorite characters making appearances. I will say it is a much slower paced novel than the other ones. Having just read Liriel and Abhorsen and then read this one's much slower paced. It has a dual shifting perspective that I think I liked, but one of the perspectives had a lot going on and the other one didn't, and I feel like that pacing was off. Yeah, this one I felt just wasn't quite as well paced as Liriel or Abhorsen. It just wasn't quite it was imbalanced to me. So I did give us 4 out of 5 stars rather than 5 out of 5 stars, but again, this world is just so compelling, and I love the world. So even though I wasn't as thrilled with this, I really wanted it to have, there's just such a high bar I had set for Garth Nix, and I wanted so much more action, and this is much more character development and world building and setting up for what you see is going to be a couple of more books. But again, 4 out of 5 stars, and I did enjoy it. Alright, so these are the books that I was able to get through this month. 9 is a pretty solid number. One of them was a novella, but you know, I'm pretty thrilled about that because I was trying to get for like 6. Comment down below and let me know what your favorite book of the month was. For me, it's a tie between Liriel and Abhorsen. These two are 2 of my favorite of all time, and I just love Garth Nix as a writer, so these were hands down going to be my favorite books of the month. I hope you guys are all doing really well, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!